Hello, Radiant One, and a very big and a very warm welcome to Mastery, the show and podcast for brilliant spiritual beings just like you, having a human experience ready to ignite the mastery inherent in you, as well as grow and expand from within and wanting to lead with love in work, business, and life. Designed to activate the mastery already within you, here we merge the worlds of seen and unseen, magic and miracles with the mundane and the practical, spirituality with strategy, the energetic with the physical, and business, work, and life with a whole lot of love and soul. I'm your host, spiritual business coach, business developer, and radical love rebel Maria Serafina. And it is my deep honor, my great pleasure, and joy to share this episode with you. I serve business owners and leaders wanting to learn and be supported as you navigate leading with heart and soul. I do that through the Spiritual Leadership Academy, the Spiritual MBA, and one-on-one spiritual business coaching full of intuition and energetic alignment. You can find out more about everything on my website, mariaserafina.com. Having been called to this show and podcast, it is my strong guess that mastery is already inherent within you, Radiant One. If you'd like to expand and amplify that mastery, download the Mastery Activation I've created for you. Originally released within my paid membership, The Elevation, I've now made it available to all. Go to mariaserafina.com/MA or click the link in the description to receive it. Remember, if you enjoy Mastery, make sure you subscribe, like, comment, share, or leave a review to amplify the energy and love being shared in these transmissions so they can reach more and more gorgeous radiant beings like you. Today I'm joined by Nillou Zoey Johannsen. Nillou is an Iranian-born, Danish-raised writer, journalist, tarot reader, single mom, kung fu master, well, just kidding about that last one, foodie, and team leader for her daughter's soccer team, loving every single part of her life. She expertly weaves the world of being a fact-oriented journalist and a spiritual person who guides others through clairvoyance and tarot, as well as being a writer with her 2 novels from 2020 and 21, all being part of her channeling from another dimension. Her Iranian childhood gave her an early introduction to spirituality and a firm belief in a higher source inside her. I discovered Nillou through a Danish podcast she does with a former guest on Mastery, Isabelle Loge. When I heard her share how she weaves her book writing with channeling, I just had to invite her on. Just a heads up, this episode, if you're watching, is slightly different. Nillou is biking home through Copenhagen and even getting stopped by the police for using her phone while biking. I've left it in because we both found the experience to be really funny. Here is our sacred conversation. Nillou, thank you so much for wanting to join me on Mastery. For those of everyone who's watching, you can see that Nillou is outside walking. We're going to do the first Mastery walking interview and potentially biking as well in the beautiful city of Copenhagen with the blue skies and the sunshine. We have so few sunlight days that it's amazing that you're actually recording this. We're recording this for posterity. Would you start us off by just let us know who you are and what you do, and then we'll take it from here.
Sure. Hi, thank you for inviting me. I'm Nillou, and I'm a writer and a journalist, and I do tarot as well. So I'm just sensing stuff and putting them out there. And my books are mainly about the life of women in Iran, or women who fight for their rights, or minority women. So just because I was born in Iran and I came to Denmark when I was 8 years old. So that's kind of my point of view. But besides that, it's just all about, having a different point of view and still have the right to be heard and seen and to be as you are, and just not, that's one of my themes in life. So I'm a journalist and spiritual person as well. And that's kind of strange for a lot of people, but it makes sense for me.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. And I mean, that's the whole reason why I created Mastery. And I suppose why my work is evolving around spirituality and everyday life and the mundane, because I like to, don't want to say demystify, but like sort of just bring it down to earth, and because I see the benefits that come from including it or embracing it in your life.
Yes.
My first question is, when did your journey with spirituality begin? And how did it begin? Would you start us off by that?
Sure. When I was 3 years old, my mom and dad got divorced, and that was a very it's quite normal today in Denmark, but in Iran in the 80s, early 80s, it was not that common. And I felt so alone and so weird, like I was sick or something, like I had a sickness that could, spread. I felt really alone with that. And I think that in my daddy's family, there's a lot of spirituality and a belief in God. And I was introduced to God by because they could feel my pain, the persons around me and my family. And so it was like, talk to God, open up, do some prayers and stuff like that. Yeah. Just to comfort me, because that was the way they were comforting themselves during war and during hardships. So I was kind of introduced to God and to spirituality from I was 3 years old. Yeah. And it was because of something very hard, but I think that's just one of the motivations to become spiritual being. That is that you are so alone and you're so lost, and you have to open up for something greater to involve in life again. Yeah.
Yes. There's that thing. There's that song. It's that when there's a crack, that's where the light gets in. So it's like
that's that cone.
Yeah. That's how. And I suppose for a lot of people, it's the same thing. It's like the thing is, people are saying that we're being brought to our knees, but for me, the way that I view it is it's often ourselves that bring ourselves to our knees, because we're so, at least that was the way it was for me, like we're so stubborn and we're so, non-flexible, that we're not willing. We think that we have to take care of everything ourselves. And so we bring ourselves to our knees, and then we realize, oh, there's so much more to this world, and then we become open to it. So
how old were you when you became spiritual?
Well, so I don't consider myself to have been open from as a child. Now looking back, I can see that I was always picking up on things.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I can see. Hold on. So if you're watching, what was just happening was like, and
the police is here as well. Hi.
You can ride the bike and talk on the telephone.
That was such a mistake.
Yeah. Especially with the headphones on and your FaceTime.
Yeah, everything's wrong.
So
with this picture, I'm walking. I'm walking. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take care.
So this is like police in Denmark. They're so nice. In every other country, I was just like killed. But here I'm just like having a nice chat with the police officer, and I'm walking from now.
So for everyone who watched, this was a very beautiful encounter with the Danish police, and as you can see, he was even very kind. He just spoke to you in English without he could have I
was just like, say hello.
Yes. Okay, so you were asking me about my experience. Well, I think I was so I grew up with a dad who was mentally unstable, and and so I think my empathic and my intuition and my tuning in was something that was strengthened from a very early age. Not that I knew that it was spirituality or had any connection to that.
No.
Then when I was about 11 or 12 years old, I had a near-death experience where I had all air sucked out of me. I fell and saw the light and went through all those things that people do. And so I think that from the age of 11, I've always known that there was something else, that there was like, there was a oneness, there was something else. And throughout not my teens, but my 20s, I explored different kinds of religion and never really found a home or a place in that. I like the connection to God, but not the dogma and the doctrine that is
The
in religion.
rules, yeah.
And so, my spiritual journey, I suppose, begins probably almost 20 years ago and has just expanded from that. I like to say that my lid's off. It's gotten more and more and more over the years. So it's an expanding journey. The me 20 years ago would look at the me today and think, uh-oh, like she is far out when it comes to spirituality. However, the me today look at the 30-year-old and think, the level of satisfaction and joy I have just by living and being present and having my practices is so freeing, so satisfying, so nourishing that I wish I could have had that 20 years ago. And so I suppose that's part of also the reason why I do this, because I want to bring that to more and more people. So that was me. Hold on. You've gone all journalist on me, and you've turned it around. Well,
I do that.
Yes, I know this. However, so let me take you. I want to shine back the light back on you in terms of you were 3 years old, and that's when you like began experiencing God, I suppose. But what was the journey like? How was your connection? How has it evolved? When did you realize that it was spiritual? That was a lot of questions. I'm gonna let you speak.
I think it was always spiritual from the beginning because
Yeah.
I had I was missing my mom. As a divorced child in Iran, I was basically missing one of them all the time because they were in war together as well.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so I had like God up in the skies. I could see his face. I could talk with him when I was alone, and in that sense, it became very spiritual, very very early.
Yeah.
But it was also like I grew up in a Muslim country with a lot of fear and a lot of like you said the stuff you don't like about religion.
Yeah.
So like God is hearing every thought you have. God is having his notebook. He's writing down every failed action you're having.
Yeah.
And that gave me a lot of fear for God as well. Really true, not just for fun fear, like OCD kind of fear for doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And that's been an imprint in my life, actually. So spirituality and God became also like a dangerous matter for me as well. Yeah. So it's not that pure and clean, unfortunately, but the God and the power of love that can always help.
Yeah. Okay. And did you have certain practices from your like, or when did you like, what was it like during your teens? Because then you moved to Denmark when you were 8 years old.
Like when I came to Denmark, I was the only one talking about God, and everyone was just looking at me like, "Are you crazy, out of your mind? What? Like you're from Iran, you're a Khomeini's child, and you're Muslim as well." So I had to let go of God. I had to let go of everything I believed in when I was 8 or 9 years old, I think. And also like just the thing that I had a Persian language until I was 8, and then I had to practice Danish, and my language, when it changed, it also changed my my relationship with God, because it was just a new language, it was a new life, it was a new person, so I just had to rediscover everything, and the stuff that didn't work out here, the Iranian spiritual God stuff, I just had to go. And I believe that I had the most dark hours of my life during my teens because I did not have anyone to believe in besides myself. And that's just a very lonely place for me to be. So, but I met God again actually in the Catholic church. My mom moved to Paris when I was in early 20s, and we went to church together. And I was just sitting there staring at the Virgin Mary's. Because in those Catholic churches, they have all these saints, like so I was just staring at her pictures and dolls of her and stuff, and all of a sudden I could just remember God again, and it was so healing in such an deep way. Like I could come back again from darkness. It was very profound, actually.
That is such a beautiful thing, and also it highlights how we may think that we abandon God, and that's totally fine, but God never abandons us.
No. He just came back in her instead. I mean, like instead of being an old guy with white beard and how I imagined him as a child, he became this lovely mother who saved his child and just so unconditionally.
And and I think that's beautifully put, also because to me, God doesn't have like a gender. God to me is an energy. God to me is love. There is like, it's us humans who have made God sort of human-like, but it's that's not how I view it. So one of the things that I know is that you use tarot. How did you come to work with tarot? How did tarot find you? Did you find tarot? What happened there?
Tarot found me. My cousin, who had just been in India for 5 months at Sai Baba, I think his name was called, at his ashram. He came home and he was wearing this dress, and he was very spiritual and enlightened for the time being, and he was drawing pictures and stuff, and all of a sudden he gave me a present. He gave me a set of tarot, and I was, okay, that's interesting. And because we shared this spiritual path together. So he gave it to me, actually, and then I had to go on a summer trip with 10 friends that summer. And I brought my tarot with me, and I was like every night, every day, every morning, just doing tarot on everyone all the time, practicing. And I did that for 16 years, actually. Just practice. And then all of a sudden they became oracles that talked instead of being pictures explaining, if it makes sense.
So and tell me about how was that experience when the cards started speaking to you? How was that?
It's very mystical. I mean, I can sit with a total stranger and they can have a question and I can think something, and then I ask the cards. And the cards can just tell me a story that's totally different, or that's so precise. And I'm just like, I have no idea. So I'm just going with the energy and with the, it's the same when I write books. And if I can get to a place where I can hear my characters talk, they tell me what to do. I'm not telling them what to do. And it's the same with the cards. If I can listen, and it's easier at some point because they have a structure and they have some pictures and they have a story in themselves. But together they can do new narratives that are so surprisingly beautiful and a profound help for them who sits with me.
Because that's one of the things. So you have a podcast together with 2 other beautiful souls, one of whom I've already had on this had a conversation with, Isabelle Lore. And when I heard you speak about tarot, and I just want to emphasize this is in Danish, people. So if you're Danish, go watch it, or I'll leave a link so you can find it. But when you speak about the tarot, that's like, it sort of has me perking up, because it's very obvious that you're not just looking at the card. There's, I suppose, in exactly what you're saying, there's a communication that happens. There is a transmission that happens when you pull the cards. Like, I can hear you, sense, the thing. So that makes sense. And I love that you say that you've practiced and practiced, because that's one of the things when it comes to spirituality, there seems to be sometimes this tendency to think that, oh, it should just be there, but it's actually
no.
exactly the practice of it, the rituals,
the discipline.
Yeah, yes, exactly. The discipline, which I absolutely love. So one of the things and this is part of the reason why when I heard you say this, I was like, oh, I wanna have a conversation with this one. You were saying how you were using tarot in your work. So as a journalist and as an author, how do you use tarot in that realm?
I don't, but it's the same process when I write.
Yeah.
Like I listen more than I talk. So
Yeah.
I listen and I ask the questions and then the answers come. And that's the same procedure as in tarot. I ask questions and then they give me the answers. So I could ask is this meeting going to go well, and then I could get some answers, but I'm not using it otherwise, if you get me. Like,
yeah.
But I do it, I listen. I think a lot of journalists, they think they listen, but they forget to truly listen. And I'm good at listening. That's my thing.
Yeah.
I'm a good listener.
And it sounds like, so correct me if I'm wrong, but so it sounds like, the 16 years of practicing with tarot, the listening, the being in communion part, the
storytelling as well, because as a writer, I guess I could say it that way, that I tell stories, and I do that with tarot as well. So one card is that one story. The tilted spread is a story in itself. That makes sense in another way, in a deeper way.
And so it sounds like the process or the ritual, quote unquote, that you have with tarot is sort of the same that you use when you go into writing. Is that sort of not the like because you're saying that you're asking a question and then you're listening and then essentially you're expressing what is coming through you.
Yeah, I'm getting guided at some point. Yeah. But I use my own intuition a lot, I guess. I mean, I can't just go everywhere. I have to use my life experience. You have to have a lot of life experience to tell other people what the card says, and you always use your own life experience. So I have like a bank account of life experiences that I use to express certain feelings. Like if you get the devil, it's not the devil as in as we know it, but it's the devil of fear, of temptation. It's some kind, or it could be a good devil. You need to take the devil out for a dancer, and basically it's always very near my own experience. So I can say exactly what that person needs to know, because she came to me for with a question, and I have that experience. I could share with her through tarot. If it makes sense. And that's the way when I write books, I have this point of view, and from this point of view I can share my or a narrative from the story, and that could be helpful for someone. Or a lot of people. So in that sense, it's the same movement, I guess.
Yes, and it's sort of like the same framework, I suppose, in that you're using. And so having honed that over 16 years and plus like that, I can see how that can help you or translate into journalism. You mentioned something about listening and your intuition. Can you tell us like what was the process? Like was it conscious, and how have you honed that skill of listening?
I've been so curious all my life in a way that is almost too much, I don't have any filter in my curiosity. I'm just curious. I just want to know. And it's really like, it can be offensive to some people because they just don't want to tell. And I just don't get it because I'm very open myself as well. I don't have any secrets, and I also believe in the whole life, like as a spiritual human being. I also drink and I also do bad stuff, but because I'm a human, I'm a soul with a human experience. So basically I'm having this human experience.
Yes.
And I use that when I write and when I listen and when I talk. And if I didn't know that, I couldn't tell another person, don't do that. Because I haven't tried it myself, I would be very judgmental. But because I've tried everything, I say yes, basically, and not that much no. I could practice a little no every once in a while, but because I say yes, because I'm curious, I can also help other people because I refer. I have a rich bank account of experience.
Yeah,
I can say I collect that because that's my thing here on Earth. That's to collect experience and to emotionally connect with other people because I've tried that or similar to that at some point.
Yes.
So yeah.
And that's something I love that you're sharing that, because that's one of my pet peeves as well, is the whole notion that we cannot be quote unquote high vibe all the time. We're spiritual
beings.
Lie. Yeah. We're spiritual beings having a human experience with everything that entails. Personally, I don't drink. It's not, hold on. So it's not that I don't drink. What happened, I realized that when I had alcohol, I would also 2 days later, be very emotional and very depressed. And I connected the two. So I haven't had alcohol in years, but it's not like I never made the decision, I'm never going to drink again. I may one day drink again. I don't know. It's not, I'm not very, I don't like the whole, black and white, where it's it's so strict and so rigid but
that gets me back to my childhood life in Iran of being a Muslim, and then you're sinning. If you don't do this, do that, you create suffering in the world, but you're creating suffering by suffering yourself as well. So I mean, it's I'm different in my spirituality because I have this upbringing I had where I really tried all the restrictions, and I know that it's no good for anyone because we are human and we need to sin just a little bit every once in a while.
Yeah.
And there is no sin, actually. Yeah, you have to be good with others and you have to treat others like you treat yourself. Or like you want to be treated. But besides that, you have to be free to be in this experience as well.
Yeah. It's interesting that what you mentioned about, coming to Denmark and, people looking at you like you're batshit crazy because you're talking about God. Because I had another sacred conversation with this is a client of mine who's Polish, and she had she also had an experience of communing with God, and then we were talking or discussing the whole the Danish. I see it changing. Not too long ago, there was a survey, or no, sorry, not survey, but there's a PhD, and I'll leave a link to an article where they said 80% of the Danish people that they surveyed was looking for a higher purpose or something, connection with something, which I find to be interesting because Denmark, I think, is the only country in the quote unquote Western world or in Europe that has a state religion. We're literally born into Christianity, whether we want it or not. We have to sign ourselves out. And so it's so interesting how far removed. And I can only speak for my own personal journey, but I remember, for me, when I started talking about God in Danish, that was way more difficult than it was in English. So I get what you're saying in terms of the language.
Yeah.
And also because in Denmark, it's when you talk about God, there's always this, or there seems to be this assumption that we're talking about, like you said, the white man with the white beard that's judging you, come judgment day. And so when I was 14, I was going through my confirmation. So in Denmark, you have your baptism and your confirmation around 14. And I remember this very clearly. I was going through my confirmation and, listening to all the sermons and the things that the priest was sharing. And I had a question for him, and he was very open, or welcoming. And I said, so you tell me that God always forgives and there's always a new tomorrow. And he was very happy. He was like, yes, 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 great student, you've gotten it. And then I asked him, so if God always forgives and there's always a new tomorrow, how can there be a hell? And I don't remember what he said. I only remember my reaction was, what the fudge? Like what he shared with me did not make any sense. And later for me, I've found in my personal experience that hell is a state that we create ourselves. Like that, like there's absolutely hell on earth, because that's part of like the internal hell that we create for ourselves. So I remember, and I think that was sort of where I sort of veered away from at least the Christian God, or the Protestant version of God, and now I've come back to another version. So, question. So, what you mentioned how those years were the most difficult, and you said in your 20s you began finding. How did you find your way back?
Well, just to pick it up from where you left it, like I think the churches in Denmark, in the attempt of trying to make God as someone ever present in yourself, they killed all the magic. And I think that's the problem with a lot of, because I'm a church walker, actually. I love to go to church. I love to do lights and pray. And I do love the sacred room of the church, but I feel like I don't have the same magic like I have in Italy or France, or, you know, where they still kept the saints and the imaginary of the rituals, the stuff we do to believe, the practical things, because we are human in a human experience. We need the practical magic as well. And I think that they cleared all that in the Danish churches, in our way of having Christianity. And as much as I like that the thought of God being in you, it's very unmagical to go to a Danish church. And in that sense, I don't think it makes sense for people. I mean, why go there? There's no magic.
That makes sense.
And to believe is a magical way of being, you know. It's magical thinking, and we are not allowed to have that in Denmark. At some point, we're not allowed to have magical thinking, because then you're weird. And I think that's kind of the problem with one of the problems with the church.
That's a really, really good point. And I think that the reason why the churches are quote unquote sacred places or have a special energy is because of the love and the intention that is being poured, because, you know, prayer is like, it's energy. And so I think that these places do still hold the energy of the intention and the vibration of the love of the people that, you know, that they share in there. But I mean, I've had, like, I don't belong to the Danish church for a long time because of the way that they view certain topics, in terms of, like, there's been some things, even though we're on the forefront of things, there's also been some areas where I just like, no, it's a no for me. Like, having the experience that I've had, I used to have a podcast, it's still up there, that's called the Magdalene Voices, where I had a lot of sacred conversation about Yeshua and Mary Magdalene. And having had that,
that's interesting.
I almost, like, there was one I remember, this was probably one of the last times I was in church, like it was on Christmas, because, you know, the churches are never, in Denmark, the churches are never filled except for Christmas, right?
Eve,
they're full. And I remember going there, and I remember the priest, she was sharing something, and then she went into this whole rant about, you know, it doesn't work unless you also come on other days than Christmas. Like, she was basically just telling people off. And then she was also sharing some stuff about Yeshua, where I was like, I almost laughed it. I had to cover it as a cough, because I was like, because it was just, what she was saying was just, to me, so far out. Okay. So
I get you.
Going back to, how did you, like, was there a particular thing that made you or find your way back to spirituality? Like, was there a moment, or was there?
I was very depressed in my early 20s. I have had a lot of years without any belief and
Yeah.
in a survival mode, because like I was a refugee that came here with a mom who was busy doing her own life, and
Yeah.
so I became so depressed in my 20s when when adolescence starts and
Yeah.
high school ends and what to do,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's the real test, and I just didn't have anything to look back at, because
Yeah.
I was just very in a very depressed
Yeah.
point. It, everything was just gray, basically. I
Yeah.
remember, and then
Yeah.
I went down to my mom, who had left and who lived in Paris,
Yeah.
and she took me to these churches, and we were just sitting there, and just basically sitting there,
Yeah.
and yeah, that was it, basically. That was
Yeah.
it. And in so you always need some magic to believe, and
Yeah.
I do. I always need a little bit of magic, and I was so in love with this guy in Paris, and I so much wanted him as a
Yeah.
boyfriend, and I
Yeah.
was just sitting with Mary all day long and praying for him to become my boyfriend, and he did, and that was just like, I think that was a magical proof for me that
Yeah.
God is there, or
Yeah.
if you put the intentions,
Yeah.
and maybe more than anything, I just needed to believe again,
Yeah.
and that's why.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So yeah, that was the way, and then it
Yeah.
opened up for me, and
Yeah.
but I would still say that it took me a lot of years um to practice praying again. Like Isabel has she's praying all the time, and that's that's an inspiration for me as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
To to remember, because they did that in my family all the time. They went
Yeah.
backstage in the
Yeah.
kitchen, and
Yeah.
then they prayed, and then God made His magic all the time.
Yeah.
I'm so used to that as a child, to see these
Yeah.
magicians ladies doing their stuff. They were really. I had some badass aunts in my family who could
Yes.
do who
Yeah.
could practice magic with prayer. So
Yeah.
I believe in it. But
Yeah.
I'm also the kind of human who's so curious and so skeptical. So I need proofs. And
Yes.
I get that every once in a while.
Yeah.
I get
Yeah.
my proof. So I'm unfortunately, I'm not that trustful.
No.
but because I also have a logical sense, and but I get my proofs, and that's good with me.
And that's the thing. I think that being spiritual today, I think, requires being skeptical. Or not, I don't know if it's requires, but I think that and I think for me, at least, when I talk to people who are spiritual, there's always what I call healthy skepticism. There's always that checking in, because it's funny. One of the things that when I work with people is, like, I use this, I call it the OAT method, like observe, assess, and then test or tweak, because for us to think that we can pick up or scientifically prove something with tools that have only been around for 50 years or 100 years, to something that is, like, a gazillion years old, like, that's sort of. So what I like to do is, I like to, again, be the observer of what's happening, and I like to track, again, observe, which is where I track things, and then, see what's going on and what's happening, and then assess it. So there is, like, you can, at least to me, I find you can sort of make a scientific approach to your spiritual practice. You just have to know what you're tracking and how you're tracking it, and what's happening. So that's what I recommend in terms of that. Hold on, there was another question that was coming up for me. Yes, so you how, because I see that one of the things that I see is that, for me, because you mentioned you were refugee, you're from Iran,
Mhm.
and I think that a lot of when we look at, especially when we look at indigenous cultures and what has happened, like with the Greenlandic Inuits, with the Native Americans, with the Australian Aboriginals, like the original people, the First Nation people, and I think that when you look at what happens when you take away the magic, as you call it, like the spirituality with the practices, there is a disconnection that happens, and that disconnection, like you mentioned, like brings about depression or like the wanting to numb yourself, or like if you don't have that, have you thought about that, or how do you view that?
Kind of at some point different, because like the country I come from is one of the oldest civilizations
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the
yeah,
whole world. So I think that the Sufi
yeah,
part of Islam that, or like, yeah, that I grew up with was so much bigger than life itself. And I think when I came here, it was like it closed down the bigger part of
yeah,
life itself. I think at some point, sometimes like Odin, he gave his eyes. He gave it as an offer to get his sight.
yeah,
So I think at some point you need some suffering to open up. But when you have been through that suffering, and when you have opened up, you
yeah,
also have to let go of the suffering, and just
yes,
to get the view you
yeah,
receive.
yeah,
And I think I've been through that um, transformation, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah,
I think that it's somehow like in Greenland or some other parts of the world, people lose their raison d'être. They lose
yeah,
their way of living, and a lot of their religion is gathered on the way of like being an Eskimo, and to
yeah,
believe in the sea god, because she's taking care of you, but you don't
yeah,
use the sea anymore because you don't go out hunting. So I think that's a different story, but basically I think it's the same when you lose your. We all have to go through a certain point of suffering at
yeah,
some point, and
yeah.
what's the called, the point is not to close down, the point is to open up.
Yes, yes. And that's actually one of the most difficult things, is like when we find ourselves hurt, like to stay open, to stay flexible, and to stay subtle, because like you say, the tendency is to do the other thing, is to shut down and
Yeah,
shut ourselves
yeah,
off. Okay.
yes. And I think
Okay.
a lot of I totally agree, and it's not easy at all, and I'm not saying
No,
that I'm doing gracefully every day, but I
no.
think that I have God, and I pray
Yeah,
for gracefulness in my life, and I think
yeah,
that's the most important thing you can do in this life,
yeah,
because life is so rough,
yeah.
and you just have to be graceful in it. And a lot of people are not
Yes,
graceful because we forget about grace.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, one final question that I have has to do with, you mentioned how it sounded like you were going into sort of like a zone, or I don't know if you want to call it that, maybe it's a vibration or frequency, when you were writing like your books, and the characters. And so do you have a process for that, or how does that happen? How do you make, because again, when it comes to writing, there seems to be this tendency also to think that it should just be happening, and if it doesn't just happen, then you're not a writer, right?
It's
So
funny that you asked, because I've just been to a meeting with my editors.
yeah,
And the last book I got published was in 21. And
yeah,
so we are at 24 now. So for 3 years, I've been trying to do this difficult new book.
yeah,
And the recipe is to sit down every day, or when you can, and
yes,
give it time, and be respectful around inspiration, and to show is
mhm,
inspiration that you're willing, and then it will come
mhm,
to you. There
mhm,
is no secret recipe besides,
mhm. Yes,
being willing and saying yes.
Yes.
and give it time. So there are no like it's some books are written in my first book. I basically it took me 3 weeks to write it,
Yeah.
and then of course I had to do some editing afterwards.
Mhm.
This one is 3 years and still it's not out yet.
Yep.
So there are no, but that's a test as well, and that's beautiful as well to to show dedication and to keep moving and do something new. And I think that's a point of life as well. Do you lose your belief when something isn't the way you want it to be, or do you continue? I mean, that's the real question. And to believe in something that's not out there yet, but that you're creating, that's the whole point, of believing, of having a spirituality. It's not there, you can't see it, but you believe in it, so you make it happen. That's the same as writing books.
Wow. Yeah, because so the thing for me is like I've had I have difficulty with the words believe, because for me it's not a belief. For me it's a knowing. There's like there's a knowing. But when you talk about believing in terms of writing the books, I can see how I can see that. I can see what you're saying, which is really interesting, because it's making me think about I can feel that this is something that's going to ruminate for me in terms of believing, because I'm very like I'm not resistant, but believing to me is but I see what you're saying in terms of it, and again I love how, and I don't know why that keeps coming up, but the discipline, right? The discipline in terms of sitting down, opening yourself up, sitting in front of the computer, like that's how you become the vessel. You open yourself up, how you become the channel, how you bring that through you, that expression, and then you spice it up with, like you said, your life's experience, your magic, your all of what you've gone through. Yes.
But the question should always be, how can I serve? And if I can serve by sitting down by the computer and just being willing to go through this pain it is to be a writer who can't write her third book, but then I'll do it, because that's my way of serving. At some point it will. I cannot let my ego take this project from me. So that's just because that's not serving. That's just being.
Yes. I like to say deny, not ignore, in terms of recognizing, okay, it's difficult, and I'm not going to let that stop me. I'm still going to continue on. I'm still going to be showing up, not, again, like you said before, in terms of cracking open, not letting that shut you down, but open you further up. Yes.
Sure. It's not been proven yet. Like when I wanted to be a writer for a lot of years, and I had so many friends also close to me who was just like, yeah, right. I mean, you're a journalist, but everyone wants to be a writer, and why are you? And I was just like, because I think I should be a writer, and that's a calling, and you cannot discuss that just because it's not been seen yet. It's not. That's not the same as it's not possible. No. You just have to serve,
Yes,
to make it happen.
And in terms of like what you shared, in terms of the stories that you write, in terms of minorities and highlighting people that are not being highlighted in a way, like that's really important. And that's where you matter in terms of your background and your story, and that can serve other people.
Like everyone matters, because everyone has a very unique point of view. Mine is just happens to be from Iran, who came here, but yours is just as important. And I think everyone should have that knowing in themselves that your point of view, your life experience, your voice matters, no matter what.
Yes. Nillou, is there any final words, anything you want to say before we go? Is there anything? Are we complete in terms of this?
I'm home, so I'm all good. But thank you so much for for letting me be with you during my trip across Copenhagen with police and everything. I love this country. I just
yes. You're so welcome. It has been a joy to sit with you. Thank you so much. And to everyone listening, I will link to Nillou's profiles and stuff and books and things in the description. So make sure that you check her out. Sending you all so much love. Have a wonderful day.
Ciao.
That is what I have for you in today's episode of Mastery with Maria Serafina. I hope it served you well. For all the deeds and details, click the link in the description and help me spread the love of this transmission by sharing it with a friend or on social media, or leave me a comment or review. Have a wonderful day. God bless.